You know, the only thing I miss about developing without recording myself is I don't get to develop shirtless anymore. Unfortunate. Welcome, ladies, gents, and other humans. So there's a lot to get through. Let us get started. I've got a whole list. So, source control, sprites and flipbooks, setting up my very own level with my very own art assets, setting up my own character as well within our Pixel 2D plugin, and getting the character moving. So let's jump right in, shall we? Source control, in my opinion, is a non-negotiable. You wake up one day and you're super excited, super motivated. You make a grand old cup of coffee, you sit down at your desk, the birds are chirping, the sun is shining its godly rays through the curtains next to you, and you open the project, only to make a change that damn near breaks the entire project. And you saved it. If you did it right, what you could actually do is crack open a portal into time, to a time where the mistake didn't happen, by using some sort of software, let's say SourceTree, because that's what I'm using. We'll scan the project files. You can tell it exactly what to track the changes of and exactly what files to leave out. And once you commit to these changes, you add a level to what will be known as your main tree. This main tree is the center of your program and continues to go upward. You can spawn off different branches depending on different features and things you'd like to experiment on, and if you're happy with those, you can actually merge it back. Well, I've got a little something called source tree right here. You're gonna see a whole bunch of stuff. Don't panic. What we're looking at is the main trunk of my tree, and all of these are commits. I've opened up my project. I've randomly pulled into the main character's blueprint. Now if I drop in here some sort of node, let's make a custom event. Custom event basically says, as soon as something that I describe as being done occurs, it will fire off this pin. Now this custom event can be fired in and of itself from some other event. It can be called, so to speak. Now if I tell it to print a string, it won't do that now because I haven't really connected this event to anything. I'm just using this as an example, because if I press save and I close the project, see what happens. Wait for it. Would you look at that? And we've got something called an uncommitted change. So if I go to commit, it tells you that the file that is located in content, the fallen blueprints player, bp_player character .u asset, which is that exact file we had open. It won't be able to read exactly what I changed, but it knows something has changed. And so I can tell it, yo, that was me. Save it. And if I say stage all and I hit commit, what it'll do is it'll come back here and it'll change this into the name of the commit I just made. If you actually want to go back a level, if I'm not mistaken, you check it out. I stand to be corrected, but I try not to make it a habit of having to go back on my commits too often. But if I have to, I believe it's checkout. Don't quote me on that. No, I'm kidding. I think there's one or two things that I still need to work out on the checkout system, but I believe I've used that in the past a few times because I've made many mistakes in my life and in the game. Yeah, that's source control. Easy peasy rice cheesy. I just downloaded SourceTree, sign in with an Atlassian account, and it actually connects you to a remote server that you can use to back up your data up there. If you pay for the service, you can back up more data. Easy peasy. Alright, that's source control. So now I really wanted to pull through my own assets and start to play around with the way the game engine is set up. So I decided to use my existing assets just because I'm too lazy to create new ones, and I think it looks pretty good in any case. So I first built a reference image in Affinity Designer using assets that I've already collected. Pretty basic, just made a floor, a background, put my main character there, and I just put a couple platforms. After I was happy with that, I exported each of these elements into textures, which is just essentially your PNG image, and imported it into Unreal Engine. Small minor issue. It's the same thing. What am I doing? Minor issue. Unreal gave me a little bit of an error, but it's nothing major. We just changed a little bit of code here. So we had to open up the default game.ini. So it showed up in the warnings tab, and it actually said click here to open file, found a depreciated INI key, and it actually told me exactly what to replace it with. So I did just that and the warning went away. Easy peasy. We start by importing your PNG art, and I use PNG just because it allows for transparency. How will you take a set of frames and actually translate it into an animation to put into the game engine? Okay, so I'll open up one of my design files and actually show you an example of how I did this flipbook. So let's take something like a cute little flame. So I gave it 3 frames. What I'm going to tell Unreal Engine to do is to take these 3 sprites, which are delivered to Unreal Engine in the form of an image, chop up the image into sprites. I'm going to tell Unreal to play the sprites one after the other, and it turns into a flipbook. So let's build this character out, shall we? I did follow a tutorial for this one. The way PolyArt constructed the template for a player character, I've already built all the mechanics into components. So things like your health, movement, that's all built as components. So I first started out by making a player character. I added the character movement component, as well as 1 or 2 other components that, was required in the tutorial. Okay, so I dropped my character in after adding a camera to it, only to find that I see the world from another dimension. It just took a little bit of code to actually tell Unreal to utilize the camera that I was using. However, that is something that we are going to replace later on in a later video, because I feel like this camera can really be improved because it's a bit janky. It follows the character a bit too strictly, and I think a nice flowy follow camera will be a nice addition. But for now, this will do the trick. So before we actually get it felt like somebody was breathing down my neck, but it's just my fan. So before we actually build our player character, I want to show you how I got the animations done. They're pretty much exactly the same how we did the flame animation earlier, just on a bigger scale. I used an existing set of animations. Essentially, I made a grid. Within each of those cells, I put a different frame of the animation. Admittedly, the animations aren't that good. I don't consider myself to be an animator, but it's good for now. I separated them into things like your running animation, your jumping animation, your melee attack animation, climbing animation, jump attack animation. Once I put them all into a grid, pull them in as a texture, separate them into sprites, I can take them and select them and turn each set of those sprites into different animations. So let's build a character. So here's how it's going to work. We're going to have a set of variables to track the states that our character is in within our player character blueprint. Blueprint is the way we do the visual coding in Unreal Engine if you're lazy like me and don't want to touch code at all. The principle is pretty much exactly the same. It's just that there's a graphical interface now. And a blueprint you can think of is a page of code. So if we're dealing with something like a player character, that's going to have its own page of code that deals with everything that has to do, or most of the things that have to do with the player character. They can store a whole bunch of different variables, components, a whole bunch of different behaviors can be mapped to each of these blueprints. So we're going to have a whole set of variables to track each state that our player character will be in. Our animation file is going to watch our player character blueprint and look at the changes throughout those variables. If we have a variable that tracks whether or not our character is moving, when I press D, I want the is moving variable to be set to true. When I let go of D and I stop running, I want the is moving variable to be set to false. Now our animation file is watching this. It's gonna say, for as long as the is moving variable is true, play the animation. Easy. Now you can apply that to pretty much any animation for our character. Now I have quite a few of these variables set up already. I've got is moving, jumping, falling, melee attacking. Essentially this is going to be all of the animations that we want to play. Now what we're building here is a sprite state machine. So it's essentially a model of how animations change between each other, transitioning from an idle animation to a run animation, from a run animation to a jump animation, from a jump animation to an idle animation, and so on and so forth. These are my starting animations. I'm sure there'll be plenty more, but so far I've got things like jumping, movement, idle, falling, what have you. When we start the game, we enter from here and we start by idling. Now if I press D to go forward, the is moving variable is going to be set to true, which means I want to start moving. And so there's a transition between idle and movement. Once I stop moving, I can go straight back to idle. That controls all our animations. Easy peasy. Lemon squeezy. And so, ladies and gentlemen, that's where we ended up. We've set up source control, we've got our level laid out, we've got some animations and a working character, and I think this was quite a bit of progress that was made. So, if you like what you saw, like and subscribe to see more, drop a comment, and I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Cheers.